Today, we're going to discuss about reproduction in animals. In class 7, you have studied about reproduction in plants. Now in this class, in this chapter, we're going to study about reproduction in animals. We already learnt about the importance of this process, reproduction. Living organisms, they carry out various processes, life processes, like nutrition, respiration, excretion. Along with these essential life processes, living organisms, they also carry out one more important life process called reproduction. Reproduction makes the organisms to produce the young ones of their own kind. Every organism is capable of producing the young ones of its own kind. A cat produces a cat. A cat cannot produce a dog. A dog produces a baby dog. So animals, they have the ability to produce the young ones of their own kind. So that is the reproduction in animals. What are the various methods? What are the various modes of reproduction that we see in animals? That we will discuss in this chapter. But first of all, we are discussing the importance of reproduction. So why reproduction is important for an organism? Every organism, it wants to continue its race. For the perpetuation of the race, of its race, of every organism, it wants to reproduce the young ones of its own kind. So by this, on this planet, we see so many organisms existing. Humans are existing. The lifespan, the lifetime of a human being is maximum 100 years. If the human is not able to reproduce after 100 years, no human beings. The lifetime of a dog is 20 years. So the dogs are not reproducing. After 20 years, you will not find any dogs. They become totally extinct. If reproduction is not there, that particular organism will extinct. Nowadays, so many species of wild animals are endangered. We might have studying this in newspapers and TV news channels. They are telling certain species of bird is endangered. Certain animal is endangered. Tigers are endangered. Endangered in the sense they are becoming less in number. After a few days, they will be totally disappeared from this planet. Why? What is the reason? Because those animals or those birds, they are not having proper facilities to feed and to reproduce. Their number is very less. So even though they reproduce, protection is less. The forest is undergoing for deforestation and other activities. If they reproduce also, the young ones, they have very less chances to survive. Their habitats are destroyed. So the animals are becoming extinct. So reproduction is one of the life processes which makes the organisms to continue their race. The particular species is continued on the planet until the reproduction is plain and peaceful. If the reproduction is going on, the organisms produce the young ones of their own kind. So that is the importance of this reproduction. So modes of reproduction, just like in plants, there are two different modes of reproduction observed in animals. Sexual mode of reproduction, asexual mode of reproduction. Generally, in case of plants, we find so many examples for asexual reproduction. But whereas in animals, it is limited. Most of the animals, they take part in sexual mode of reproduction. Only in few cases, we find the asexual mode of reproduction in animals. But majority of animals, they reproduce by this sexual mode. So we know the basic difference between the asexual and sexual mode. What is sexual reproduction? Sexual reproduction means the reproduction in which there is a fusion of two gametes. So sexual reproduction means sexual reproduction means fusion of male plus female gametes. Fusion, the joining of male and female gametes, they join together to form a zygote. This zygote, it develops into a young one, baby. So this is the sexual reproduction. So you can say that, you can define that what is, if somebody asks you what is sexual reproduction, the reproduction in which the male gamete fuses with the female gamete to form a zygote, it is called as sexual reproduction. Or the reproduction in which the fusion of male and female gametes takes place is called sexual reproduction. So here, for this sexual reproduction, for the formation of this zygote, what are required? What are required? Gametes are required. Gametes are nothing but reproductive cells, or they are also called as sex cells. Sex cells or reproductive cells. How many types of gametes are required? Two types of gametes are required. Male gamete, female gamete. Male gametes are contributed by male organism. Female gametes are contributed by female organism. So these two gametes must be fused together to form this zygote. So for this sexual reproduction in animals, two gametes are required. Male gamete, female gamete. Male gametes are produced in the body of males. Female gametes are produced in the body of females. So to produce these gametes, male and female organisms, they have special organs. Males have male reproductive organs which produce the male gamete. Females have female reproductive organs to produce the female gametes. Now, let us see the description, the diagrams of male and female reproductive systems, various parts, and how the gametes are produced in them. So the gametes, the reproductive cells, are produced by the organisms. Male gametes are produced by male organism. Female gametes are produced by female organism. So organisms, they have special organs to produce the gametes. If you see, in case of male, this is the human male reproductive system. This consists of different parts. The male reproductive system of human consists of a pair of testes, a pair of testes, sperm duct and penis. So the testes are the organs in which the reproductive cells are produced, and they are passed to the sperm duct, and finally they are ejected through the penis. So testis is the organs in which the male gametes are produced. The male gametes are also called as sperm cells. They are produced in a large quantity. So millions of sperm cells are produced at a time, and here we can see the structure of sperm cell. This the total thing, the total unit is a single cell. This is a single cell. This kind of cells, millions are produced. So it consists of a head, middle piece and a tail. The tail helps the sperm to move. Sperm cells, they have mobility. With the feature of mobility, the sperm cells, they reach the egg cell. So they need to travel a lot. The sperm cells, they need to travel a lot in the female reproductive system to finally reach the egg cell. So for the movement, for the mobility, the tail of the sperm cell helps. So this is about the male reproductive system. So the male reproductive system, it consists of a pair of testes which produce male reproductive cells or male gametes. So the testes are connected to sperm ducts through which the sperm is passed and finally ejected through penis. So now let us look at the female reproductive system. female reproductive system of humans. Here it consists of different parts like ovaries, a pair of ovaries, left ovary, right ovary, a pair of ovaries. Ovaries, they produce ova or eggs. Ova or eggs, singular is ovum. So these egg cells are female gametes. So the female gametes are called as ova. Female gametes are called as ova. Male gametes are called as sperm cells. So where are these ova produced? The ova are produced in the ovaries. See, in male reproductive system, the testis, it can produce the sperm cells in large number. Millions of sperm cells are released at a time. And the sperm cells are very small in size. But whereas the ovaries, they produce only one ova per month. In 1 month, in a day, cycle of 28 days, the ovary, it produces one ova. And these ovaries, they produce the ova alternately. Say for example, 1 month this one produces one ova, in the next month the other one produces. Right? So monthly only one ova is produced. Even though there are two ovaries, only one ova, one egg cell is produced in a period of 28 days or 1 month. So here, whatever the ova or the female gamete that is produced, released from the ovary, it passes through the tube. This tube is called as fallopian tube or tubule. Fallopian tubule. Like this it passes. So what is this center part of this female reproductive system called as uterus? Uterus is the bag-like structure in which the baby develops. So here the female gamete or the egg cell, when it is passing through the fallopian tubule, if by chance, if it fuses with the sperm cell, then it becomes to zygote. And this zygote comes down here and fixes here. We will see that how the fertilization takes place in the next part, in the next session. But here, let us see the fallopian tubule. The fallopian tubule is the tube which connects the ovary to the uterus. Uterus is an elastic bag-like organ which has got all amenities, all facilities for the complete development of the baby. So that is the female reproductive system. Female reproductive system has got the female reproductive organs. Those are the ovaries, a pair of ovaries. They produce ova. When you compare the size of ova with the sperm cell, which one is bigger? Ova is bigger. The ovum is bigger compared to the size of the sperm cells. So we have seen the gametes and the organs which are producing the gametes in male and female. Now let us see the fertilization. How the fusion of gametes takes place and what happens after the fusion of gametes. So now let us see the fertilization. What is fertilization? The fusion of male gamete plus female gamete leads to formation of zygote, and we call this process as fertilization. In many of the animals, the fertilization takes place inside the female body. When the fertilization takes place inside the body, we call that fertilization as internal fertilization. Internal, that means inside the body. Inside the body of which organism? Male or female organism? Female organism. So you consider the male organism as a father and the female organism as a mother. The fertilization takes place in the body of the mother. So the female gametes, where are the female gametes? The female gametes are in the female body. The female body consists of female reproductive system. This is the female reproductive system. And in the female reproductive system, this part is the ovary and here is the ova. The ovary releases a ova and the ova, it travels in the fallopian tubule. Here is the female gamete. Here what should happen? The fusion should take place. The fusion of male and female gamete. But where is the female gamete? It is in the fallopian tubule. The fallopian tubule is a part of female reproductive system. The female reproductive system is in the female body. By chance, if the sperm cells enter the female reproductive system, if the sperm cells enter the female reproductive system through these vagina, and these sperm cells, if they could fuse with the egg cell, here number of sperm cells, they reach this place. What is this place? Fallopian tubule. But out of these sperm cells, only one sperm cell can penetrate the egg cell like this. So number of sperm cells, they try to penetrate the ovum, but only one sperm cell, it penetrates the ovum and it fuses with the egg cell. So this is a place where fertilization takes place. The male reproductive cell or the sperm cell fuses with egg cell. See here, this is the egg cell and this is the sperm cell. Here we can see that the two sperm cells are trying to penetrate. Here one sperm cell, it penetrated. Once the fusion takes place, the egg does not allow any other sperm cells to get in. Now here we can see the nucleus of this sperm cell, the nucleus of this sperm cell and nucleus of the egg cell, they join together to form a combined nucleus. So when the combined nucleus is formed, we call this as a zygote. Fusion taken place. After the fusion, you call it as a zygote. Where is this zygote? Here. The zygote is formed. So by the time when the egg released by the ovary, if by that time, if any sperm cells are introduced into the female reproductive system by any of the male, if the sperm cells enter into the female reproductive system, the sperm cells, they fuse with the female gamete. The male gamete fuses with the female gamete and there the fertilization takes place. So once the fertilization takes place, what is formed here? Zygote. The zygote, it comes down, it travels down and it fixes to the wall of the uterus, either this side or this side. This is the wall of the uterus. Here the zygote, it fixes. So there the zygote is a single celled one, but it slowly develops into the entire baby, complete baby. The development, it takes place in the uterus. So this is called as fertilization. So how this fertilization takes place? Where this fertilization takes place? This takes place inside the body of the female. In cows, in hens, in dogs, in humans, the fertilization takes place inside the female body. The male reproductive cells are introduced into the female body, and in the female body, the male cells fuse with female cells and the formation of zygote and reproduction, that fertilization takes place. This is called as internal fertilization. But in animals, in certain animals, fertilization takes place outside their bodies, not inside the body. Let us see that example, how the fertilization takes place outside the body and what is it called so. So we have seen the internal fertilization in animals like humans, cows, dogs, hens. In all those cases, the fertilization takes place inside the body of female. Now we see some other kind of fertilization which takes place outside the body of organism. In certain aquatic organisms like fishes, starfishes, and in frogs, the fertilization takes place outside their bodies. Let us see how. During the rainy season, the frogs and toads, they move to the ponds because that is their breeding season. Even fish in monsoon, they breed. Ponds and slow flowing streams, because if it is heavy floating, the eggs will get washed off away. So here, first the female frog, it lay the eggs. It lay the eggs like this into the water directly. Immediately the male frog, it lays the sperm, it ejects the sperm into the water. So in the water, the sperm cells, they have tails, they float, they swim. The sperm cells, they swim and they find the egg cells and they fuse. But here you see here, the environment plays a very important role. It is all like chance, fertilization by chance. Many of the eggs may be missing the sperm cells. Many of the sperm cells may not be able to fertilize it, because it is all happening in an open environment. Because some other predator may come and eat all the eggs. Some other fish may come and eat all the eggs, because it is happening in the open, external, outside the bodies. That is the reason why these frogs and fishes, they lay their eggs in large number. You see, humans, internal fertilization, only one egg in 1 month. Here it is secured because it is released inside the body. There is no threat to that. But whereas in case of animals like frogs and fishes, plenty of eggs are released at a time. Why plenty of eggs are released? Because many of them may not survive. Some of them may get washed away by the water currents. Some of may be eaten by some other predator animal, some other fish. So only a few could survive. Of course, many of the eggs, even though they are fertilized by the sperm, even though they are fertilized, there is no guarantee for the fertilized eggs till they are developed into young ones. They may be eaten by some other animals. There is no proper protection. That is the reason they are produced in large number. So because of the large number, of course 70 to 80% of them are died because of different situations. At least a 20% could survive. So this is the external fertilization which is observed in frogs and toads and fishes and in starfish. In all these cases, the female organism lay the eggs into the water. So those eggs are not like the eggs of hens. The bird eggs are shelled. They have a shell. But these eggs do not have any shell. They have a jelly-like material. So why they have jelly-like material? Sometimes these eggs may get washed away by the water current. So to avoid that, with the jelly-like material, they stick to some of the leaves or twigs or water plants. If there is anything there in the water bodies, they stick. Even after fertilization, they stick to some of the objects that they develop. So that's why they are covered by jelly-like material. So this kind of external fertilization is observed in frogs, fishes and starfish. In aquatic animals, many of the aquatic animals, we find this kind of external fertilization. The fertilization which takes place outside the body. The fertilization neither takes place in the body of male or female. It is outside. Whereas internal fertilization, it takes place inside the body of the female. Now let us see the development of embryo. So again, come back to that internal fertilization. We discussed about internal fertilization, external fertilization. So in the internal fertilization, the fertilization takes place inside the body of female organism. And we have seen that human female reproductive system. So this is the human female reproductive system. Now let us see how the development of embryo takes place in case of humans. So this ovary releases the ova. It releases the ova. Again, the ova is collected by the fallopian tubule. So the ova is the female gamete. The female gamete, it has to be fused with male gamete. So if any male gametes enter the female system, then it fuses. The sperm cell fuses with this egg cell and zygote is formed. So this is the zygote. The zygote means a single cell with both the nucleus mixed together. Nucleus of male gamete and female gamete. So both the nuclei, they join together, they form the zygote. It is a single cell. Now this zygote, it develops into two. Now these two become four. So likewise number of cells, and finally it becomes a ball of cells. Ball of cells. That means gradual cell divisions takes place. One cell becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 2, 8. Likewise, it becomes a ball of cells. So many cells. So what happens to this ball of cell? What is this called as? So this is called as embryo. So this embryo, the number of cells are increased here, and this embryo, it gets implanted in the uterus. In the wall of the uterus, the embryo gets implanted. Here is the embryo. it get implanted in the wall of the uterus. The wall of the uterus, it is just like a cushion supplied with so many blood vessels. It supplies oxygen, food material, everything to this embryo. So this embryo, it develops into fetus. Means the embryo, it divides constantly, again and again and again and again. So the cells of the embryo, they differentiate. Some cells of embryo become into hands, some cells of embryo changes to head, some cells changes to legs, some cells changes to body. Likewise, the cells present in the embryo, they differentiate into different parts, head, hands, legs, likewise. So a fetus is formed. Fetus means, fetus is the stage at which we can identify all the body parts. At the stage of fetus, all the body parts are identified. Yes, these are the hands, these are the legs, this is the head. Earlier, how it was only one cell. The one cell divided to 2, to 4, likewise a ball of cells. Now this ball of cells is becoming into a baby. Some cells they change to head, some cells they change to hands, some to legs, likewise. The cells are differentiated into different body parts. So all the body parts slowly they start developing inside the uterus. So when the fetus means in the stage of having all the body parts are visible. So all these body parts, when they are completely developed, the fetus, it turns to a baby and takes birth. So then the birth of the baby happens when the fetus is completely developed in the uterus of the female reproductive system. So this is how the development of embryo takes place in higher animals, in internal fertilization. This is the example of humans. In case of humans, how this takes place. The same happens with the other mammals like cows, dogs and cats and all. Right. Now let us see how the development of embryo takes place in animals like birds. Hen, they lay the egg. Hen do not develop the baby inside its body. The development of the baby takes place outside the body. Hen just lay the egg. The hens, they lay the eggs. But whereas you see in humans, the baby is completely developed inside the body. When the baby is totally developed, then the birth takes place. The baby is coming into the world after complete development. But in case of hens, they are laying eggs. Egg is not at all developed one. If you break the egg, you can't see any chicken in that. If you break the egg, you see only egg white and egg yellow. That's all. It is a cell. It is not developed. Where the development takes place? Outside. The hen lays the eggs. If the egg is incubated for 20 days, or if the egg is incubated in an incubator at certain temperature, then the egg turns into a chick. Now let us see how it happens. See, in case of animals like hens, when the zygote is formed, so around the zygote so many layers are formed. So these layers, they form the hard shell called as egg shell. So the shell is protective in nature. Now hen lay the egg. So this egg becomes chick when the hen sits on it. When the hen, it sits on the egg, when it provides heat, when it incubates, then the egg, it breaks and the chick comes out. So usually they do it for some 20 days of time. They incubate the eggs to make them into chicks. But artificial incubators are used these days to make the chicks, to get the chicks out of the eggs. So naturally, the animal, it provides the warmth to the egg. So the development of the embryo takes place outside the body. Certain animals, they lay their eggs in the rocks. They do not provide any heat. Just simply they lay the eggs and they go away. Certain reptiles like snakes, some tortoise, alligators, they lay their eggs and they go away. They do not incubate. Then how these eggs are incubated? They lay their eggs on the rocks. During daytime, the rocks become very hot due to sun, and that heat is supplied to the eggs. So from that heat, that means the incubation is done by the environment. In the same way, in certain water animals, they get the temperature from some other place. But some eggs, they need temperature, some do not. But in certain cases, certain animals, they incubate, they sit on the eggs and they hatch the eggs. In some cases, by the environmental temperatures, by the environmental factors, the eggs are incubated and the young ones come out of the eggs. So in this way, the birth of the animal takes place. The differences we found there in between internal and external fertilization and development of the embryo inside the body and outside the body. So now here we see one more classification of animals depending upon the mode of reproduction, how they give birth to the young ones. The animals that lay eggs are called as oviparous hens. That means all the birds and reptiles, fishes. So these are all oviparous animals. That means they lay their eggs. They do not give birth to the young ones. Viviparous animals means they give birth to the young ones. Completely developed young ones. Dogs, cats, rats, humans, elephants, tigers, all these are animals, all the mammals, they give birth to the young ones. Mammals. They feed the young ones with their own milk. So these are the characteristic features of mammals which we have studied in our lower classes. So the viviparous animals, they give birth to the young ones. Oviparous animals, they lay eggs. So when we are talking about the reproduction, the birth of young ones from the parents, here we need to discuss one more point, that is young ones to adults. See, the organisms which take birth, they become into adults. Small babies become into big animals. But here, in case of animals, we find certain differences in certain cases. If you see a human baby, how the baby is when, by the time the baby is born, after growing adult, big, also the baby will be the same. The baby will possess the same body parts, same hand, same number of legs, same number of hands, same number of fingers. So you don't find any drastic change in the body of humans, all mammals, other animals. You see cats or dogs. So how the cat was born, by the time, how many fingers and toes it has got, after becoming into an adult, it will be like that. Its face and body shape. It doesn't change its shape. We will not find any drastic changes. But whereas in some cases, we will see some drastic changes in their lifetime. So in their lifetime, they change their form, different, completely, entirely different from one stage to another stage. So this drastic change is called as metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. So where do we observe these metamorphoses? Here we are given two examples in our textbook. One is butterfly. So the butterfly, it lays the eggs. So the beginning stage is egg. The egg, it becomes larva or caterpillar. Caterpillar or larva. So this larva, it feeds on the leaves, it eats a lot of food and changes to pupa stage. See the difference, egg, caterpillar, pupa. It undergoes a continuous sleep. Right? This pupa, it becomes a beautiful moth or a butterfly. So now we can see the drastic change. See the form of its body. Compare the form of its body from caterpillar to butterfly. It's entirely different. But it is all a single lifetime. In a single lifetime, at different stages, it appears in different form. It undergoes a drastic change at each and every stage. We call that drastic change as metamorphosis, which is not observed in humans. We don't show any drastic changes at different stages of our life. Of course, there will be some changes. Our height may be increased, our weight may be increased, we may become thin or we may become fat. So this kind of simple changes, not drastic changes. We totally cannot change like any other different forms, but here it is entirely different. You see the caterpillar and you see the butterfly. How much difference you find it here? So this is metamorphosis. So I told you two examples are given. The first example is this, but what is the second one? Let's see. Now let us see the second example for this metamorphosis. Again here I am drawing eggs. So eggs of what? These are the eggs of a frog. Eggs of a frog. They develop into early tadpole. See the early tadpole, it resembles a fish. So that when the fish larva or when the young fish and this tadpole are mixed together, it is very difficult to identify which is frog and which is fish. So its form is exactly like a fish. It does not show any hands or legs. It will be swimming just like a fish in the stage of early tadpole. Now see the late tadpole. In late tadpole, the front part looks like a frog. It has got front limbs, but backside you can see a tail. This is late tadpole. And finally, it becomes a frog. Frog. So we can see the variation. So there is a drastic change in its shape. So this kind of drastic changes at different stages of its life is called as metamorphosis. And even you see, not in the form here, when it is like a tadpole, it just behaves like a fish and it has got gills. It breathes through gills. But when it changes to a frog, it breathes through its air sacs and moist skin and buccal cavity. There are different means of respiration. But it doesn't possess any gills here. No gills here. But here when it is in the form of tadpole, it has got gills. So that is the difference we observe. So certain animals, when they grow from their birth stage to adult form, in the meantime, at different stages, they change their form. They show drastic changes. That is called metamorphosis. It is observed in animal. It is observed in butterflies and other moths. It is observed in frogs and all. Whereas in other animals, mammals, humans, so they are just alike from the stage of birth to the adult form. Now let us see the sexual mode of reproduction in animals. We have seen the sexual reproduction, different modes, different methods. Now asexual reproduction. Primarily we observe two things, two different types of asexual reproduction. One is binary fission, the other one is budding. Here binary fission is observed in amoeba. Amoeba is a protozoan. Of course, it is not exactly considered as an animal if you go for 5 kingdom classification. But till now you know that 2 kingdom classification, plants and animals. So according to that, these protozoans, this amoeba, we consider it under animal here. So if you see this amoeba, it undergoes division. One amoeba, it divides into 2 daughter cells. So no more parent exists. One parent becomes 2 daughter cells. This is the parent. First what happens is the nucleus divides into 2. Once the nucleus is divided into 2, now this amoeba, it starts dividing into 2. 2 nuclei are formed. The 2 nuclei are spread like that, and now two daughter cells are formed like this. So this is binary fission. Here there is no fusion of gametes. That's why we are calling it as asexual reproduction, because no gametes here. One parent cell divided into two by simple division. So these daughter cells, they grow into adult. Again they divide in such a way. So this kind of reproduction is called as asexual reproduction. As one cell is splitting into two, we are calling it as binary fission. If one cell is splitting into many, you call it as multiple fission. But here only one cell is splitting into two daughter cells. Two, binary, bi means two. So this is called as binary fission. Now let us see the budding. Budding is another method of asexual reproduction in which the organism reproduces without the fusion of male and female gamete. Here the example is Hydra. Hydra is an animal which is having a vase shape, and it will be having fingers on its top like this. This Hydra, it reproduces by producing a bud. The Hydra produces a small bulge on its body. First it produces a bulge on its body. Later, this bulge, it becomes into a bud. Bud, small bud. Now the Hydra is having a bud. Bud is still attached to the Hydra. Later, this bud, it gets detached from the parent and lives as an individual Hydra. So in this way, in the method of budding, the Hydra reproduces. This is also asexual reproduction. So here in animals, in asexual reproduction, in animals, we see two examples. We have seen two examples. One is binary fission. Example is amoeba. The other one is budding in Hydra. So in this lesson, we have learned so many things about reproduction in animals, how animals are reproducing, different modes of reproduction, sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Under the sexual reproduction, we learned what are gametes, and we learned what is a zygote, we learned what is fertilization, we learned what is internal fertilization, we learned what is external fertilization in examples, and how these zygote, which is formed by fertilization, how the zygote is becoming into the babies, and different modes of fertilizations, and finally the asexual reproduction, and in the asexual reproduction, binary fission and budding. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.